Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So it has been a really slow week. I've thought about things that I wanted to talk about here and there, but just never really seemed like it was enough for a full episode. And of course, I was sort of afraid of a ban list dropping as well. I wanted to make sure that we stay fresh to cover that. Today we are going to be covering a few different cards trending over the last week or so. We have a couple of things popping back up as players are speculating about what will come both with this ban list as well as in terms of meta impact with the new cards from Legacy of Destruction. Let's get started. Alright, so the first card we're talking about is Punishment Dragon. We talked about this card a bit back when it was first spiking. Basically, this is a retrain of Judgment Dragon that came out in Code of the Duelist when we got the Twilight Sworn monsters. They were overall pretty bad, but technically they were all Light Sworn, so you could do some interesting things with them. However, Punishment Dragon literally saw zero play. However, the new Lightsworn support coming in Legacy of Destruction includes a new fusion monster, and it technically does require you to play a copy of Punishment Dragon, though you can of course just banish it from your graveyard for that summon. Lightsworns being a fan favorite strategy, this now means that if you want to try and play Lightsworn in 2024, you're probably going to have to run a single copy of Punishment Dragon, which is why this card is currently trending. However, Punishment Dragon only had one printing from Code of the Duelist as an ultra rare, and it wasn't even reprinted in the tins from that year. Now when we look at the 6-month graph here, we can see that before, this card was literally a $1 card. That first big spike you see is from when the Lightsworn cards were first revealed for Legacy of Destruction over in the OCG. It shot up to around $15 or so, but it then quickly settled back down to around the $6 to $7 range. However, over the last month or two, the card has continued back up as we move closer to the TCG release of Legacy of Destruction, and it now sits at $14 to $15 per copy. Lightsworn hasn't done anything in the OCG. I don't really have much of a reason to think that it's gonna be better here in the TCG, especially since the OCG still has cards like That Grass Looks Greener and Fairy Tale Snow. Either way, even if it were going to be good, Punishment Dragon will very likely get a reprint in the next OTS tournament pack, so don't get too excited for this card. Maybe keep a single copy if you want to run one in your own deck, but other than that, this is definitely the type of card that you sell off while it's so hyped up. This next card we're going to talk about is also going up because of Legacy of Destruction. This time it's because of the Melodious archetype, its first movement solo. So the Melodious theme is historically a really bad one, but apparently the new support that they're getting in Legacy of Destruction is actually pretty decent. They get a couple of pendulums, a fusion, and a new spell card. I think they're actually alright. In fact, in the OCG, the new cards do well when combined with the Supreme King Pendulum cards, though I think maybe the pure Melodious deck isn't that great. First Movement Solo is a card that is only for pure Melodious, as I didn't see it in the Melodious Supreme King deck. This card lets you special summon a level 4 or lower Melodious monster from your deck if you control no monsters, but you are locked into Melodious monsters for the rest of the turn. So this card really has done nothing but go up over the past several months. This used to be only a couple of dollars, but as you guys can see here, it has just gone up over time. I think we talked about this card when it was around that $8 to $10 range, but with only the 3 different super rare printings available, all of which came out within about a year of each other, any single copy that you find is going to cost you between $15 and $20. I think one other thing that might affect player mentality towards this card is the fact that Melodious cards are historically printed in low rarities. If I had to make a bet, I would assume that the Melodious cards will mostly be commons and maybe have a super thrown in there somewhere. That means that the rest of the deck would be super cheap to put together, so of all the cards that could spike, the only thing that could practically do that is First Movement Solo, since it would be the last piece that players need to complete the deck, and it's the hardest one to find. Just like with Punishment Dragon and Lightsworn though, I don't expect this deck to do too well competitively, so I would definitely offload them as soon as possible if you have the chance to. Alright, so oddly enough, the archetype that's been getting much more attention than expected recently is Paleozoics. The Paleozoic hype started with Joshua Schmidt taking the Paleozoic cards to a regionals, but I think that other players have actually been seeing some success with the card. There was a Tierliament Paleozoic deck that made a top 8 at a regional last weekend, and I believe that in the OCG as well, there was a 60 card Paleozoic deck that did well at a big tournament. Now, one of the cards spiking because of this is Morella. It is a typical Paleozoic trap that can special summon itself from the graveyard as a monster, but it's also just a foolish burial for trap cards. This can be useful to send another Paleozoic card, but you can also send things like Rise to Full Height, Transaction Rollback, or the Black Goat Laughs so that you can use their graveyard effects as well. Most of the Paleo cards were originally common, but as we noted in a previous episode, some of them got super rare upgrades in various OTS tournament packs, and Morella happens to be one of them. This was a $1 card before, but the supers are now actually $5 to $6 each right now, which is a very notable price spike percentage-wise. However, I don't think there's too much to be hyped about here. I think it's more just that people are bored and want to do something else in the format right now, so I think that once the next format does roll around, realistically, you guys won't be seeing anything else from Paleo at all. This is just another card for you guys to dump while it is seeing so much hype. So I guess this is something I should bring up. Tierliament's Kashtira is actually currently trending once again. So as we just talked about, Paleozoic Tierliament actually made top 8 at a regionals. Nothing like too crazy, but I guess it is still pretty surprising. Now in terms of Tierliament monsters, the deck ran 3 copies of Tierliament's Kashtira, so I guess that's some sort of demand for the card. Keep in mind that for the most part, Tierliament's cards are actually pretty cheap, and there will be a very brief window where Perlerino will be reprinted in Rarity Collection 2, but Tierliament's Kashtira will not, so this could be theoretically the most expensive card from the archetype until the 2024 tins hopefully reprint it. I also have this sort of feeling that players are just going to keep on treating Kit Kalos like Thunder Dragon Colossus, where it's extremely unlikely that either card is actually going to get unbanned, but players are going to keep on hoping for it with every single passing ban list that we get. Tierliament's Kashtira is now up to $16 to $18 each. This card has historically been at around $10 for most of its lifetime. It spiked last year when it was good with Yugioh and Kelbeck before they got banned. They got banned, so the card fell down. I guess now it's seeing some sort of demand again. I don't know, maybe if someone who's like psychic or has their uncle actually working at Konami, they know that Kit Kalos is going to be limited, then yeah, this could be the best read ever, but realistically this isn't something to hold on to since it'll get that tin reprint anyways, so most of us should just be looking at selling this card off while we can. This is sort of another random one. This is a trap card called Give and Take. It's quite an old normal trap card. You special summon a monster from your graveyard to your opponent's side of the field, and then you increase the level of one monster that you control by the level of the special summoned monster. So on this upcoming ban list, I know a lot of players are expecting Albion the Sanctifier Dragon to get banned, as it's one of the more crazy cards in the game, and the Gimmick Puppet Lock is really degenerate to play against. It seems that some players are already looking for another way to puppet lock people, though as players are giving some attention to Give and Take as an alternate way to force Gimmick Puppet Nightmare onto your opponent's field. It seems really specific since you'd have to draw this card and get the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare into the graveyard, but I guess with cards like Trap Trick and Triple Tactics Thrust, this is something you could do. I just don't really see it making too big of an impact on the game or being all that competitively viable. The card is pretty short on quantities though. It only has one printing from back in Duelist Pack Yusei back in 2009, so this card is really hard to find and its only printing is like 15 years old. Most of the ones that you find in someone's trade binder are going to be pretty beat up. If you want to try to buy a near mint copy on TCG Player right now, you're looking at having to spend $20 per copy, but for the most part I think you don't really see them, even historically, on their move for more than around $5 or so. I'd say that's a much more realistic market price to assume. The card is just too specific and too situational to really see that much play. If it were good, then like absolutely everything could run the Gimmick Puppet Lock, so I would just go ahead and dump the card while it's seeing some hype, if you can actually find someone who's willing to pay up for it. Alright, we're ending off with a couple of smaller cards to make note of here, with the first one being Kashtira Unicorn. So Kashtira Unicorn is actually a crazy monster if you really think about it. It's a free special summon of a big body without any restrictions. It searches for a Kashtira spell from your deck, Kashtira Birth being an absolutely insane card, and it can potentially rip a card from your opponent's extra deck really easily. Honestly, if Fenrir wasn't as crazy of a card as it is, I would argue that Unicorn could be just as splashable in a lot of decks. Now, I guess players are picking up on how crazy the Kashtira cards are in general, as one of the decks that we've seen getting a lot more attention online recently is Kashtira Snake Eye. I believe the idea is that you just see them early. Birth is still being an insane card. You can send Planet for either Diabellstar or Ash or Oak, and worst case, right, you special summon a Kashtira, you normal summon an Ash Blossom or a Ghost Mourner, and then you have access to Baron de Fleur. However, also worth noting is that if Dimension Shifter doesn't get hit, I do think that pure Kashtira is still a really scary rogue, sort of like anti-meta deck that players are going to be scared to play against. Right now, the Kashtira cards are mostly really cheap. Unicorn, Fenrir, and Birth were all reprinted in the Megatins, so they're reasonably accessible, Fenrir being obviously the most expensive of them. Now, most of the decks that splash Kashtira cards don't use Theosis, since that card locks you into Xyz for the rest of the turn, and then Raitsoth is already confirmed to be getting a reprint in Rarity Collection 2, so that's going to basically make that a bulk card. Unicorn is a card that I would be keeping an eye on right now. It's only $1 to $2 right now for either the original Ultra Rare from Darkwing Blast or the Secret Rare Megaton reprint, and if all of the other cards get even more accessible, I could definitely see Unicorn gradually trending upwards in price over time. One last card to touch on here, it's Samurai Destroyer. Now this is a level 7 generic synchro monster. I actually read about this card over on the metagame report over on roadoftheking.com. Make sure you guys go ahead and check them out. So if this card battles an opponent's monster, your opponent can't activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step, and also that monster that it's battling has its effect negated during the battle phase. So this stops the yugioh monsters from inflicting damage back to you, it allows them to be destroyed by battle, and they also don't get their effects when they are destroyed, so this card really does sort of shut them down pretty hard. Level 7 is also really easy to make in the Tenpai Dragon deck, so this card can be a really solid option if you're playing them as well. Now right now, this card is literally only 50 cents a piece, however it has just one printing as a rare from back in Circuit Break, which came out back in 2017, so quite a few years ago. We've seen tons of times where cards with only one rare printing end up being worth like $4 to $5 a piece, so this is something that I'd definitely try to dig up out of your bulk if you can find it. It may not be worth too much right now, but with Tenpai Dragons and Yubel looking like they're going to be extremely meta-relevant strategies after Legacy of Destruction drops, it just might be worth owning a copy or two of this card sooner rather than later. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. Some random stuff that we talked about today. I know that with a lot of the cards I said, yeah, we just want to sell this card off while it's hyped because there's such a high chance that the card is going to get reprinted or that the card is going to tank. But when we have reprint sets coming up, like Battles of Legend Terminal Revenge and OTS Tournament Packs and then Rarity Collection 2, as well as the fact that we just know based on this OCG precedent that a lot of these strategies just probably aren't going to pan out, I feel like it's the responsible thing to just sell off the cards while they're hyped, and then even if they're part of your collection, you always have the option of buying the cards back down the road. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure that you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.